In the last video, we ranked some of the most notable quarterbacks in the NFL on a tier list, and in this video, we're going to be doing the same thing, but for all 32 NFL teams. This is the tier list that we're going to be using for this video, but let's go ahead and get right into this. We're not doing this in any particular order. As you can see, the first team we have is the Ravens. We're starting off good here. I think the Ravens are one of the most complete rosters in the league, one of the best secondaries in the NFL, drafting Malachi Starks, having Kyle Hamilton, of course, and then now with Jaire Alexander as another addition to the team. The offense looks relatively similar as well, and with Lamar Jackson, as long as he's healthy, I think they are still contenders, even though Jackson in the playoffs has not been performing as well as he does in the regular season. I talked more about that in the quarterback ranking video, but I still think the Ravens as a complete team, of course with Derrick Henry, a running back who's getting up there in age, but I think he still has 1 to 2 good years left in him. I think the Ravens are still one of the best teams in the league and definitely have a chance at dethroning the Chiefs in the AFC. They're Super Bowl contenders in my opinion. Next up, we have the Saints, who offensively do have a lot of talent. The only problem is they're rolling out with, most likely, Tyler Shough as the starting quarterback, and I'm just not very high on him. Defensively, they do have some talent, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the bottom 10 defenses in the league. A lot of aging players like Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis still on that team. Just overall, I think the team does need to get younger defensively. Originally, I was going to put them in the D tier as a team that I think is definitely going to miss the playoffs, but not be one of the worst teams in the league. But now looking at it, outside of Alvin Kamara, Rashid Shaheed, and a relatively decent offensive line, I don't think the Saints have too much going for them. And I actually do think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Even though their division isn't necessarily that crazy, it's better than it's been in recent years. And I think the Saints are probably going to finish last in that division. So unfortunately for Saints fans, I do think this team is going to be one of the worst in the league. We started at the top of the league with the Ravens, then the bottom of the league with the Saints. Now we have the Miami Dolphins, who definitely land somewhere in the middle. They still have all the offensive talent in the world. A lot of the same guys that they've had the last couple years, like Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Tyreek Hill. If these guys can stay healthy, I think the offense is still going to be very solid. Of course, same thing goes for Tua. Offensively, it's all about the health. Defensively, nothing crazy going on for the Dolphins. Not one of the best defenses in the league. So overall, at the end of the day, they are rolling out with Tua for another year, who, if he stays healthy, they could be fringe playoffs, but I'm going to have to throw them mediocre. The last couple years, they've been one of the most banged up teams in the league. And with them retaining a lot of the same pieces that they've had over the last couple years, I just don't see them making a push for the playoffs. They're definitely not going to win the division with the Bills, of course. The Dolphins, solid team, but there's just so many good teams in the league this year. I don't think there's enough room for them to be in the fringe playoff tier. I think they're just mediocre. Next up, we have the Bengals, a team that looks really similar to what they were last year. Offensively, of course, we know how talented the team is. Defensively, relatively similar. At the time of recording this video, we're not sure whether or not Trey Hendrickson is going to stay with the Bengals. Whether or not he does, I don't expect this defense to be in the top half of the league. With that being said, I think the team is actually a playoff lock just because I think the offense is that great. You could argue the team's similar to last year, and last year, of course, they did not make the playoffs. But if you remember last year, it was such an all-time collapse by the defense. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were both having the best seasons of their career. They were able to figure the run game out towards the latter half of the season. Pretty much all of their losses were one-score games, and because of the defense, I think it would be nearly impossible to see that happen again. That's my reason for this team being a playoff lock. Yes, they're not going to win the division, but I do think they're going to end up being the 5 seed in the AFC. And I could see the argument for them being a fringe playoff team. I think the offense is going to have to carry them for another year, and I think they are going to make the playoffs if that is the case. Next up, we have the Giants, who a lot of people might want to put in the F tier as one of the bottom 4 to 5 teams in the league. Honestly, I'm going to put them just one tier above. Obviously, not much of a difference there. We'll see if Jackson Dart or Jameis Winston end up seeing the field. As of right now, I think it is going to be Russell Wilson for most of the year. Offensively, the team is still talented. Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson had a good tail end of the season last year. Their pass rush is one of the top 10 pass rushes in the league, in my opinion. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and now Abdul Carter on that defensive line. It's actually very underrated, probably the best strength of their team, but still a lot of holes defensively, and the whole quarterback situation still needs to get sorted out. They're still not going to be a good team. They're still definitely going to miss the playoffs, just not as bad as some people think. Next up, we have the Broncos, who offensively look pretty similar to last year, but defensively, last year they were already one of the top 5 defenses in the league, And this year, it looks like they have the best secondary in the league with a very solid pass rush as well. They added Jahdae Barron through the draft, who is probably going to be their slot corner for much of the season. And we all know about how good Pat Surtain is. They were able to make the playoffs last year. I don't think they're going to be competing for the division just because, of course, we know the Chiefs are probably still going to win that division. I think the Broncos are a fringe playoff team in a very difficult division, but the team is just really, really solid. So we definitely have to give them the credit that they deserve. And right now we have one team in every tier. I think that's a good way to set the standard for each tier to start this video. But let's go ahead and move on to the Minnesota Vikings. We know how talented the offense is. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, and now new starting quarterback J.J. McCarthy, who I think is going to be really solid. I think the Vikings are a fringe playoff team. It all really depends on J.J. McCarthy, but I'm going to go ahead and put them above the Denver Broncos just because I think the team overall is more talented. Defensively, not the most stacked roster, but last year, of course, with Brian Flores, it was really a great scheme defense. And with Brian Flores again for another year, I think not much is going to change. I think the Vikings defense is still going to be very solid. So fringe playoff team for sure. Only reason they're not a playoff lock is because the division is kind of stacked. The Bears got better, the Packers got better, and the Lions did get slightly worse, but the Lions are still very good. So the Vikings, fringe playoff team for sure, above the Broncos. Next up, we have the LA Rams, who originally I was going to put in the fringe playoffs tier, but then I thought about the NFC West as a division, and it's overall not one of the strongest in the league. They've definitely gotten worse over the last couple years. Just a few years ago, they were probably one of the best in the league with the 49ers, Seahawks, and Rams all consistently in playoff contention. But now I think it's just the Rams division to lose at this point. Similar team to what they had last year. Of course, it sucks losing Cooper Kupp, but he was getting up there in age. They replaced him with another aging receiver, Devontae Adams. I don't think too much is going to be lost there. Unless Matthew Stafford drops off tremendously, which I don't see happening with his type of play style, I think the Rams are still going to be a solid team. Just not contenders. Overall, the defense is not where it was a few years ago when they were Super Bowl champions. And you could even argue the offense isn't as good, but still a lot of talented players. I think the Rams are for sure a playoff lock. Next up, we have the Bucks. The offense got even better with adding Emeka Egbuka through the draft. They have one of the best receiving corps in the league now, and Baker's probably going to be playing at a similar level that he was at last year, and I think that is enough for them to make the playoffs. I think the Bucks are actually on a similar level to the Broncos and Vikings. Only difference is they're in a much easier division. I think the NFC South is getting better though. Other else than the Saints, the division is solid. I am slightly worried for the defense. I think the secondary is weak. But even with the weaknesses defensively, I think the offense is still solid enough. And the Bucks are probably towards the bottom of this tier, but still a playoff lock in my opinion. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions, who roster-wise look very similar to how they were last year. You could argue that they got better simply because Aiden Hutchinson is going to be coming back from injury and starting in week 1. Of course, losing Ben Johnson was really huge, but I have faith in Jared Goff. I have faith in Dan Campbell as a head coach and their new coaching staff. So I think the Lions are still going to be contenders. I don't think they're at the very top of the league the way they were last year. I think they aren't as complete of a team as the Ravens with a worse quarterback and arguably a worse defense as well. I think they're going to be slightly below the Ravens. This does read as a power ranking. So right now, Ravens are at the top, Lions second, Bengals third, Rams fourth, and Bucks fifth. For right now, that's how this looks. Next up, we have the Chicago Bears, who I think are definitely floating between these two tiers. Completely revamped the offensive line, which was the biggest weakness they had last year. So I think that's enough for them to be a fringe playoff team. Once again, the only problem is how difficult that division really is. So it's going to be tough. I think their defense is probably the worst out of these three teams, but their offense is talented, adding another piece in Luther Burden to the receiving corps. That was huge for them. I think they're a fringe playoff team towards the bottom of this tier. I think they're going to be a 7 to 8 seed potentially in the NFC, and obviously top 7 seeds make the playoffs. So they're going to be right on that edge. Therefore, I think they are a fringe playoff team. Next, we got the Eagles. Not really too much to say here. Still one of the most complete rosters in the league, if not the most complete roster. If the Ravens are able to show me 1 year of being able to win playoff games, I think they could go above the Eagles. But as of right now, the Eagles are proven. The Eagles are coming off of a championship. And if a team that's coming off a championship doesn't lose too many of their key pieces, other than reordering the offensive line a little bit, I think they're still going to remain at the top of the league. The Eagles are my number 1 team in the NFL. Next up, we have the Raiders, who originally I was going to put in the mediocre tier, but I'm not going to lie. The offense is talented. The defense has some pieces that they can definitely work with. And of course, adding Ashton Jeanty through the draft was huge. I think on day one, Gentry can be one of the top 5 to 10 running backs in the league, and that might be enough to make the Raiders a fringe playoff team. If they can beat the Chargers and Chiefs even one time each, I think they could potentially sneak in as a 7 seed. That's why I think the Raiders are definitely a fringe playoff team. Next up, we have the Packers. Similar team, once again, to what they had last year. They did add Matthew Golden, however, and I think that's going to be huge. Last year, they finished 3rd in the division. I think this year, they're going to be back as the 2nd best team, and I think they're going to go right in between the Rams and the Bengals as a playoff lock. Of course, Jordan Love needs to be a little bit more consistent in the regular season for them to have a chance at potentially winning this division. There's an argument to be made that they're a fringe playoff team. The defense isn't crazy. It's probably slightly better than what they were last year, but still, overall, solid roster. Not one of the best in the league, but good enough to make the playoffs. Now, next up, we have the Washington Commanders. Originally, I was going to put them in the contenders tier, and this might be a hot take. I'm actually just have to put them in the playoff locks tier. Yes, they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to finish 10-7, 11-6. The only thing is, I don't know if this team can really win playoff games the same way they did last year. A lot of people are saying that the Commanders got better over the offseason. I think that does make sense, but the reason I'm saying that they're just a playoff lock, I think when it comes playoff time, this defense is probably not going to be where it needs to be. Added a lot of old pieces to the team, which was kind of questionable to me. I think veteran leadership is obviously important. I think the Deebo Samuel addition was kind of weird. I guess it works if he's going to stay healthy. I think the Von Miller addition was also kind of weird. Once again, if they stay healthy, it's cool, but I just don't think it's going to move the needle too much for me. But I don't think they have what it takes to compete with every team in this tier yet. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be probably at a similar level as last year. I don't think there's really too much he can do better. He's already one of the top 5 to 6 quarterbacks in the league. What more can you really ask for out of a young quarterback? I think the college-style offense, some teams are going to be able to figure out, and I think it's not going to be every team that figures it out. It's going to be probably only the best in the league that are able to stop the Commanders. That's why they're still towards the very top of the playoff locks tier. I would probably pick them over all these teams overall. I think overall the roster is just solid. Jaden Daniels is definitely bringing them up a lot. That's why I think they're just a playoff lock. Probably going to be the 5 or 6 seed in the NFC. Still could make some noise in the playoffs. I just don't see them making the Super Bowl or the conference championship. Next up, we have the Cardinals, who are definitely going to slot somewhere in the middle. We're going to put them in the mediocre tier. Another year for Marvin Harrison Jr. to hopefully get better. Other than that, the offense does look pretty similar to where it was last year. Defense, nothing really stands out. The one thing going for them is that their division isn't crazy. So could they sneak in as a 7 seed into the playoffs? Potentially. I just think the team's mediocre. They're going to go right below the Dolphins in the C tier. Next up, we got the Steelers. I was between the bottom of fringe playoffs and the top of mediocre. The only problem for the Steelers really is it's a solid team, but their division is very difficult this year, as it's been the last few years with the Bengals and Ravens. Mike Tomlin historically has been able to figure out ways to get this team to heights that people don't really expect, at least in the regular season. But Aaron Rodgers, unless he produces at a top 15 to top 10 quarterback type of level, I don't think this team's going to be in the playoffs. They're going to go towards the top of the mediocre tier. I think they're a better overall roster than the Dolphins and the Cardinals, with potentially a better quarterback for right now. I think their offense is still going to hold them back. With Mike Tomlin, you never know what the team can do. I'm going to put them towards the top of the mediocre tier. Probably going to be a 9 or 10 seed in the AFC. Next up, we have the Falcons, who I was viewing kind of similarly to the Steelers. But overall, this team just has more offensive talent, more young talent as well, more players that you could project on potentially even improving this season. I think they're going to be above the Bears, but still towards the bottom of this fringe playoffs tier, just because so much does lie on the shoulders of young and unproven quarterback Michael Penix. But in the few games he played last year, I did see some good flashes. If he's able to be consistent this year, I think the Falcons have a shot at being a potential 6 or 7 seed in the NFC. Next up is the Seahawks. I'm going to put them towards the top of the mediocre tier. Overall, the roster construction isn't great, but they did add Cooper Kupp, and they still have JSN in the receiving core. Honestly, it's not really the offense that I'm worried about for the Seahawks. It's more so the defense. The defensive line is solid, but a couple of aging guys like Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence, who we're not sure if are going to be able to produce at the same level this year. Just not a good enough roster, in my opinion, around Sam Darnold. If you're going to have Sam Darnold at your starting quarterback, you need a really good offense. Offense is decent. It's not great, but defense is definitely what's holding them back. I think they're just mediocre. Next up is the Patriots. Overall, the roster is not good. They're really just banking on Drake May carrying this team. And of course, adding Stephon Diggs was good. Probably the best receiver Drake May has worked with so far in his NFL career. But that doesn't say much considering Diggs is getting older and is probably past his prime after the injuries that he's dealt with the past couple of years. Overall, this team's not setting up Drake May for too much success. He could have a good statistical season, but overall, I think the team's not going to be good. Probably going to end up with a top 10 pick. Patriots slotted into the D tier. Next up, we have the Browns, who I don't want to spend too much time on. Didn't really improve too much over the offseason. And regardless of who they roll out as their starting quarterback, Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, who knows where Deshaun Watson is at this point, I think this team's going to be towards the bottom of the league. Not only are they in a stacked division, but their roster is just not very good overall. If they end up with the number 1 pick, I would absolutely not be surprised. Next up, we got the Houston Texans, who are in a similar spot that they were in last year. Don't think they're going to be contenders, but they are locked for the playoffs simply because their division is really, really bad. Probably the worst division in the NFL. It's been that way for the past few years. Absolutely nothing's going to change, in my opinion. The Jaguars still aren't great. The Colts, who knows what you can get out of Anthony Richardson. I don't see them making a conference championship game with teams like the Bengals, Ravens. We haven't even talked about the Chiefs or the Bills yet. So, playoff team, just not good enough to compete, in my opinion. Potentially a divisional round exit for another season. Texans, definitely in the A tier. Chargers are playoff locks. I'm hoping Justin Herbert can have a relatively decent playoff run, but once again, similarly to the Texans, too many good teams in the AFC. Don't think they're going to make too much noise in the playoffs, but I hope they do. I'm a fan of Justin Herbert. I think a lot of his criticism is unfair, but at the same time, he needs to make it happen, and I'm hoping this is the year. They're going to make the playoffs, but we'll see what happens when it comes playoff time. Next up is the Cowboys, who honestly feel like they got better since last year. I think a lot of the problem last year for the Cowboys was just staying healthy. They get Trayvon Diggs back. They get DeMarion Overshown back. As a Cowboys fan, not crazy expectations for this team. They're definitely not up here. They're probably not a playoff lock as well, just because of how much unknown there is with George Pickens, and who knows what version of Dak we get going into the season. If they do make the playoffs, I don't think they're going to make too much noise. I think they're going to be a 7 to potentially 8 seed in the NFC. For right now, they're a fringe playoff team. Next up, we got the Bills, who are definitely Super Bowl contenders. As long as they have Josh Allen, they'll be contenders. Team's very similar to where they were last year. I'm going to put them above the Lions just based off how good the quarterback is alone. Below the Ravens, just because the Ravens' roster construction is definitely more complete than what the Bills have this year. We're going to end up reordering the top 12 to 14 teams just to see who I really think is going to make the playoffs. But the Bills are definitely one of those teams who are locks, going to win their division, and probably are going to compete for another Super Bowl if they're able to knock off the Chiefs. You never know what could happen. They're definitely towards the top of the league. Going from one of the best teams in the league to probably one of the worst, we have the Titans. I'm going to put them towards the top of the number 1 pick contention tier for whatever that's worth. It really just lays on the shoulders of Cam Ward. If Cam Ward comes out and plays outstanding, they're probably going to be moving up. Their offense isn't actually as bad as some people might think. Some aging receivers like Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett. But the defense is really where I feel like the problem is. Not a great defense by any means. They're going to be in contention for the number 1 pick. Next, we have the 49ers. Of course, been dealing with injuries the last few years. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. I don't know what to think with Brock Purdy right now. I think the 49ers are not going to make the playoffs, maybe towards the top of the mediocre tier. You could potentially see them make some noise. I wouldn't be shocked if they do sneak into the playoffs. I would be surprised if they win the division, though. That's just where I think the 49ers are right now. Next up, we got the Chiefs. Not too much to talk about with them, no matter how the team looks. As long as they have Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they're going to be contenders. I'll put them below the Bills. I mean, obviously they've been beating the Bills and the Ravens in the playoffs the last few years, but maybe this is the year where that changes overall as a roster. Chiefs aren't as good as those two teams, but the coaching and overall just the winning pedigree that they have, you could argue that they're even at the top next to the Eagles, but I'm going to just safely slot them in next to the Lions and the Bills. We're closing this list off with a couple uninteresting teams, to be honest with you. I'm going to go ahead and slot the Jets into the very bottom of this list as well. Probably not going to be the worst team in the league. Definitely going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Justin Fields, not super high on him. Team's talented. They still have Garrett Wilson. The defense, Sauce Gardner's there. They have the skill position players. I don't think it's a super well-rounded roster, though. A lot of top-end talent and not a lot of depth. They're probably going to be in contention for the number 1 pick. Then the Jaguars, similar thing. I just think they're bad. Probably not one of the bottom 4 teams in the league. still not great. It's really tough to say how good the team's going to be. Hopefully he's finally able to take that step up that we've been waiting for, but I don't see it happening. Probably our last team that is worth talking about left in this video, we have the Panthers. I think they're actually going to be a fringe playoff team. Team got better from last year. Adding Tetairoa McMillan in the first round of the draft was huge. I'm banking on the fact that Bryce Young takes another step up this year. I think the Panthers are a good team, similar to the Falcons in a lot of ways, and I think I'm going to slot them right next to the Falcons. And then last, we have the Indianapolis Colts. It really just depends on Anthony Richardson, but regardless, the offense is not very good. The defense could also be better as well. But that's the whole tier list, man. We, of course, ended the list with a lot of teams towards the bottom, but a lot of really interesting teams to talk about. Let's go ahead and look at where my cutoff is for the playoffs. So we have top 5 in the contenders tier. We actually have 12 teams in the top 2 tiers. So from the B tier, there's only going to be 2 out of these 7 teams that end up making the playoffs. And as of right now, I have it as the Vikings and the Broncos. I think that's fair. And I feel like that's the way I see it. The Vikings are going to be the 7th seed in the NFC, and the Broncos are going to be the 7th seed in the AFC. Raiders and Cowboys just narrowly missing out. Then a few NFC teams here towards the bottom of this tier as well, who probably won't be making the playoffs either. But that's pretty much it for this video, man. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know if I misevaluated any of these teams or I rated some team too high or too low. I think some of y'all might be mad at the Commanders pick. Everybody seems to be mad at the Cowboys nowadays. I wonder what y'all have to say about that. Let me know in the comments what you think about this tier list. Make your own as well. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Check out the last video where I ranked all 32 starting quarterbacks in the league, plus a few more. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next. That's going to do it. Hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one.